Welcome to Community Spotlight with Think Tank. These are conversations where entrepreneurs come together to connect with each other, learn about each other, and be inspired by the unique wisdom that we all share. We each have different stories because we face different challenges, but that means that what you have learned along your journey is really valuable to bring to this community so we can learn from you and we can all move one step further. So I will invite those who are here live to put any questions that you have for my first guest into the chat as we move along, and I'll be able to ask those towards like the second half of our time. But let's dive in, and I'd like to welcome my first guest, David Hewitt, who brings his hard-earned wisdom to leadership development, and as an expert in asset management with 35 years in commercial and corporate real estate and facilities management. Hopefully I captured at least a part of what it is that you have done.
Pretty good. You read something somebody wrote nice about me.
Well, welcome, David. I would love, especially since you have such a deep career and now you're focusing on leadership development, would you tell us a bit about your journey into entrepreneurship, especially coming from more of a corporate role?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and probably maybe more difficult than you think about at times, because the entrepreneurial world is so different from corporate America, but yet you need a lot of the same skills to kind of integrate in there. You know, I started out in the early part of my career mostly with smaller companies, but quickly grew into a couple of deals that kind of helped me learn that corporate world. And I started working for some large companies. And then ultimately at one point, I was working for one of the largest development and property companies in the country, Trammell Crow Company at the time. And they had clients that were gigantic clients, and ended up having to work with a couple of very large banks, Comerica Bank, and also an insurance, or not insurance, a utility company, Pacific Gas and Electric. And suddenly you're in this world of bureaucracies where you're kind of a small fish in a way, but you're being led by this big ship of trying to tell you what they want. And yet they're wanting your advice about how to get there. Because in a lot of ways, it was in a period of time, especially in the 2000s and 2010s, when corporate America was trying to outsource, and how they would get quote unquote experts at doing this, so that because they weren't doing a good job of either building their teams or training their groups or whatever. So I guess for me, it was learning on the job at the same time. I had to learn about these companies and what their culture was like. And, these were Fortune 100, even Fortune 10 companies in some cases that, I was just some little microcosm in the midst of their world, their real estate department, which for most of them, it was a big deal for the real estate industry. But for them, well, that's just the real estate guys. We don't really care what they do. Just get us an office or find us a building or whatever it was for the day. So it was trying to understand what their corporate objectives were and how we then could mold into that what their real estate should look like. So you were having to learn a new person, in a sense. What does this corporation really expect? And yet what they were wanting was your expertise. Well, you got to tell us what we should do, because we don't know real estate. We know energy, or we know this, or we know that. And so you could have some good clients, i.e., they listened to you and they learned from you and wanted to take your advice. And you could have some clients that just say, no, I just want you to do this. I don't care about anything else. And so what I found mostly in those situations was that the best thing, what they really needed, was some leadership, because they never really had leadership. They really had organized chaos in many cases. And they had people that were doing huge jobs, but they weren't integrated with people over here or over there that were going to be impacted by these functional issues they were dealing with. So it really turned out that what I ended up learning more about was how to communicate with people. And that really was something that I don't think I was an expert at early on, but I learned very quickly, or tried to learn very quickly, is communication. And what I figured out after a while was people like to be heard. And
Mm.
so I spent a lot of time listening to people. And so you'd listen to the client, and suddenly you'd have to pick out things, because there were a lot of things that were like, that was important and frustrating and hard, but it really wasn't their issue. It was just, what they went through last week or yesterday, or the boss yelling at them or whatever. But what is your real ultimate desire? What's your real goal? What are you really trying to get accomplished here? And so that helped me. What I was learning was I had to listen better. And well, I probably would have told you at the time I was a great listener. I found that I probably wasn't a great listener. And I really had to take a lot of lessons in how to listen to people, because everybody talks a little different. They may yell about this, but they may quietly talk about this. And it's this that really is important to them. And so it was listening to people and trying to understand where they were going. Some of the times we were at points where organizations were completely changing in what they were doing, or there was a new agenda. I was helping a utility company, Pacific Gas and Electric, in their facilities department, but they were going through trying to be green and trying to, go into this whole new world of green. Well, so we had to look at what it is that they really wanted to show the public, but also what would really make a true impact, and so we had to come up with the ideas and figure that out for them. And that really goes back to, which I think is one of the lost causes in our world, is listening. And everybody wants to have an opinion. They want to make sure their opinion, their side of the story, their right idea gets out on the table. We're all like that. I'm like that. I want people to, because when we get an opinion out on the table, people feel comfortable with this or uncomfortable. But what we feel like is, I get to say what I believe. And if we think about the world we live in, that's everybody's goal. They want people to know how they feel. And yet, what do we do most of the time? We ask questions and don't listen to the answer. So it's all about listening. And I won't say I'm a perfect listener, but I think that's one of the things that I grew to understand, is I had to learn how to listen so that I could really carve out, okay, well, what I think we need to do are these 3 steps. And I'll set up the plan and we'll take care of it, and we'll communicate that with you on a regular basis. And I think that's what most people want. They want to be communicated with. They want to know where it's going. And so then my job ended up being creating that task level, and now having a team. All right, we're going to implement this. So how are we going to educate you guys? What are we going to do going forward on this? And it just so happened that a lot of stuff at that time of the world was some sustainability issues that, we now all talk about, but in those days were kind of quiet and nobody wanted to get involved in it. And that led to leadership issues as well, because in organizations, leaders, for decades felt like, what a leader meant was, you're in charge, you get to tell people what to do. And that became, no, that's really not quite what leadership is. Leadership is listening, understanding what the future state of the organization, of the project, or the life cycle of the product, or whatever that company was doing. It's looking at it and saying, okay, what is the future? Where is it going? Where should it be a year, 3 years, 5 years down the road, or whatever it is? And then starting to chop that down and saying, how do we make that happen? We got to create a vision around that. We got to understand if that's truly where we're going, if that's where the company is leading us, the CEO, the board, whoever it is, the shareholders are saying, this is where we're going, this is our purpose. this is our identity, then our job is to kind of map out as leaders, what are the steps? What are the issues? What are the needs? And then start collecting the wisdom that we have on our team. And if we don't have the wisdom to do that, we find the people that kind of fit within our team and we grow that team together. And the team has to create the actual final steps of creating that vision. To me, that's the fun part, because as a leader, if you think you have all the ideas and you're just going to tell people what to do, you might as well give up today and be done with it, because you're just going to be kicked out of the room. But yet 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, when I started in life as a employee or whatever, that's the way it was at times, and that's the way people, they understood it to be. Now I think if you really keep going further back, you'll see over decades and centuries, this has all evolved. The reality is this has always been the right way. We collaborate, we try to listen, we understand, and we get together as a team and we kind of beat things up. And there's times I'm right and there's times I'm wrong. And that's true of all of us. And if we can't raise our hands in the air and say, "Oh, I missed it on that one. I think Susie's got the better idea," or Bill has got a better slant on this, or here's another idea that we need to integrate with. And that's what becomes, I think, the wisdom of team is far superior to the wisdom of an individual.
You've basically given us a master class right now on leadership development. Because I
Yeah.
was like, a lot of the questions I had, you kind of really encapsulated in what you just shared. And it's such an amazing experience that you've had, and these different skills you developed. And before if anybody has questions, please put them in the chat. We'll have a few minutes for that. But I did want to ask you, like, as you've done so much work with leadership, your own personal leadership development with teams, with folks, what would you say, in addition to listening and communication, are really powerful qualities that people can develop to further their leadership skills?
Well, I appreciate what you just said, because listening is it's just the number one quality out there that is
Yeah. Top.
almost always lost, because part of
Then
the
can I ask you a
problem,
follow-up question? How then do you develop the skill of listening? What would you say?
and this will be strange to say, I think the only way to really do it is to say to yourself, somebody else might have a better idea than me. You have
Mhm.
to be humble about it. You have to say, you know what, I really want to get my idea out there, but I want to first listen. And I think we all have a struggle with that, because we've been in so many situations where we weren't allowed to be the talker. We weren't allowed, we were just brought into the room and said, "Okay, here's your job, go get it done, and I'll see you on Friday. And if it's not done, I'll kick you in the butt." And then so I think that I think it's truly just about listening. And I struggled with that early on, because I grew up in a family where you're at the dinner table talking. It was a competition, between my brother and my sister and my dad and mom. Everybody wanted to get their thought in, and I think that's all of our. Ultimately, even those people who say they're shy or quiet or don't have an idea, they want to yearn out there, but there's a fear that somebody's going to say, "Well, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard," because they've been there, because somebody said, maybe not that derogatorily, but in some way they've, let that person feel like, "Well, don't let me tell you what's the right idea." And I think that is a societal issue that always kind of wavers over life, and in different groups and in different. So I think the best leaders truly are willing to listen, even if what they hear, even if they think it's stupid, even if they think it's wrong, they're going to listen, because they're going to understand better the team that they're working with. And so to me, it has to start with listening for everybody, and you got to be careful. And I guess my wife will tell you, because I'm just getting old and whatever, but I have to write stuff down because I forget too easily because all these ideas come into your head and people are like that. You got to just kind of mark some notes down. And sometimes you got to scratch them out and say, no, that because somebody else came up with the new idea. But, the best thing is just sit around that table and not only let everybody talk, but sometimes force everybody to talk. And
It
there's
really invites them in. Yeah.
yeah, there's that shy person that actually probably knows more than the rest of us put together that just doesn't want to blurt it out and say, look, you idiots, what about this? But that, I think, to me, listening is a really, really, really difficult thing. And I can't tell you that I'm the master at it. I have a problem with it because
But you're so conscious of like the value of it. And it sounds like you put a lot of work into developing that skill. Well, I know we're getting close to the time, which is terrible because I want to hear more about what you have to say.
no,
But
that's okay.
but I wanted to ask, like, what is your vision for like what you're working on now? So taking all of this wisdom you've gathered into what you're doing now.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'm not sure. I think if I had the perfect job and frankly, I don't know how to get it or I don't want to do the things that it takes to get it, it would be just to spend time with people, helping them see where they could be, helping them in whatever business or whatever their other entity they're working in and say, hey, have you thought of this or does this help? Or here's an idea. Just kind of like I don't even know what the right word is. An
Your
old
men-
fart that's been around too long, I guess. But
I was going to say mentor, but okay. I
yeah,
like
a mentor. Yeah, just somebody a mentor. And I will tell you, I have a lot of friends that I just think they're my friend, but they call me up because they think I'm their mentor. And
it.
and I if that's all I ever did was just mentor people, I'd feel I'd be have a blast. That'd be
Oh,
fun.
I love
So
that so much. And I love that you are one of the mentors in this community. I think officially, right? And
yeah,
so folks can reach out to you and
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
And is there anything like that you would like to receive from the community? Because as I've heard a lot about your really powerful skills, and I'm excited to see you pour that into the community. But is there anything you would like to receive personally?
I've enjoyed trying to get to know everybody. I'm not the best typist and I'm not technology kind of, it shows how old I am. I think, you guys are on your phones and can write, 400-page letters in 10 minutes on a phone. And I'm, barely able to find my keyboard on a big old typewriter, or whatever. So I'm kind of at a glance, but I just love connecting with people. And that's like a couple of things that I do have. One of the things that I'll invite people, you can either look at my own. I have a website just with my name, David Hewitt, and I think you guys have shown that. But also, if you really want to see my heart, my writing is in a website called him-powered.com. So you can go look at that, and that kind of tells what I really look like.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here, David. And I'm really excited to hear more from you in the community. And I hope that know that you're more than welcome to continue to share your wisdom. So yay, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me on. I'm excited to hear Mary next and what else we got going on. So I like to meet people and get to know people. So that's my other favorite skill.
Wonderful.